and obviously the close battle we had at the end was a bit hair-raising, but that's motor racing.
That was Lewis Hamilton, playing down another clash with Max Verstappen. For years he stayed diplomatic, calling every collision just part of racing. But now he's admitting there is real hostility between them, and he doesn't think it's going away. So where did it all come from? Let's break it down. The hostility admission? It starts at the Hungaroring in 2024. Hamilton was running third in the Mercedes, with Verstappen behind him on fresher tyres and coming for the podium. On lap 63 of 70, both cars passed Alex Albon on the approach to turn 1. Hamilton moved back to the racing line and began to turn in. Verstappen had DRS, carried more speed than on previous laps, and went for the inside. He locked both front wheels. His left rear hit Hamilton's front right. The Red Bull went airborne, landed, and ran into the runoff. Verstappen rejoined, lost a place to Leclerc, and finished 5th. Hamilton held third and took his 200th career podium. Here is Hamilton, minutes after it happened.
The close battle we had at the end was a bit hair-raising, but that's motor racing.
Asked to take us inside the car, Hamilton pushed back on the idea that it had rattled him.
How nerve-wracking was it from inside the car?
It's not nerve-wracking.
He then described what he saw in his mirrors.
So, I saw him coming from a long way back, and he was able to brake a lot later than me.
And then the sentence that tells you exactly where Hamilton puts the blame.
But he sent it up the inside. I stayed still, and he clipped the wheel and went over. So
context matters here. Verstappen had spent the whole afternoon arguing with his own pit wall over strategy, over tyre management, over undercuts he thought Red Bull had missed, and the collision landed on top of a race that had already gone wrong for him. Note the words, "I stayed still." On the radio, Verstappen said the opposite, that Hamilton had moved under braking, and his engineer, Giampiero Lambiase, told him to leave it to the stewards and called the radio traffic childish. The stewards summoned both drivers, heard from them, and from their team representatives, and took telemetry, timing data, and footage from several angles. They found neither driver predominantly to blame. They rejected the claim that this was a case of changing direction under braking. They confirmed Hamilton was on his normal line, noted Verstappen had locked up and missed the cornering line, and added that Hamilton could have done more to avoid the collision. Verstappen's version did not move. He said the move was on, that he had committed, and that Hamilton kept turning right under braking after he was already alongside. He said he had not braked too late, and that the lockup happened because the Mercedes kept coming toward him. He also tied it to the criticism he had taken weeks earlier in Austria for the way he defended against Norris, and argued the standard was not being applied the same way to both of them. Hamilton, for his part, said he was surprised the stewards had written that he could have done more, and pointed out the obvious. One car was locked up and out of control, and the other one was not. Then he called it a racing incident, said there should be no hostility, and added the words that answer the title of this video from his side, "There always will be." That is the reveal. Hamilton is not saying he carries it. He is saying Verstappen does, and that it is not going away. 2 years later, at Verstappen's home race, Hamilton showed what that looks like from behind the wheel. The Austrian standoff. On the 28th of June 2026, Formula One arrived at the Red Bull Ring for round 8 of the season. George Russell put the Mercedes on pole. Charles Leclerc lined up second, Lewis Hamilton third in the Ferrari. Max Verstappen started 5th after he lost the car at turn 9 during his final attempt in qualifying and hit the barriers. Hamilton got past Leclerc at the start and held second place. Behind him, Verstappen worked his way forward in a Red Bull that had taken a step with its upgrade package that weekend. By lap 11, the Red Bull was on the Ferrari's gearbox. This was Red Bull's circuit, Red Bull's crowd, and a Red Bull driver with pace in hand. Hamilton had 71 laps to run and no obligation to make it easy. Verstappen went down the inside of turn 3 and took the place. Hamilton took it straight back on the run to turn 4 around the outside. Verstappen locked a front wheel into turn 4, got the exit, and lined up the outside of Hamilton at turn 6. Hamilton took the apex, he held the line on the exit. The two cars stayed side by side while Hamilton moved Verstappen toward the gravel in the runoff area, and Verstappen had to back out of it. Over the radio, Verstappen said, "That's a penalty." Race control noted the moment as a possible case of forcing another driver off the track. The stewards looked at the onboard and the external footage and decided no further action was required. Then Hamilton explained himself, and he did not soften a word of it. "You don't expect to go around the outside of a champion," he said. "He was behind at the apex, and therefore he should have backed out, but he didn't. I left just enough room for him." Hamilton kept the place for several more laps, then pitted. 22 laps of Red Bull's home Grand Prix, and the Ferrari had not moved. On lap 22, Verstappen came again, this time on the inside at turn 6, and there was no outside line left for the Ferrari to use. Verstappen went after the leaders and finished second, 1.6 seconds behind Russell. Hamilton dropped back to 5th. The rest of the Ferrari's afternoon went the same way. Hamilton had pitted out of that sequence onto a 3-stop strategy, and the strategy did not pay off in the closing stint. He finished behind Piastri and behind both Mercedes drivers on a day where Ferrari had qualified 2nd and 3rd. There was no contact. Nobody was penalized. Both drivers stayed inside what the stewards were prepared to accept, and fans came away wanting more of it. But Juan Pablo Montoya, watching from the F1 TV commentary box, said the way Hamilton defended showed the history between the two men has not been forgotten, and that drivers who have been put in that position before tend to remember it. That is the pattern. Whenever these two end up fighting over the same piece of road, the temperature climbs, and it does not matter how many years have passed since the thing that caused it. Montoya was pointing backwards, and he was right to nothing about lap 11 was really about lap 11. It was the most vivid thing the two of them had done to each other all season, and it happened 4.5 years after their championship fight was supposed to have ended. So to understand Hungary and Austria, you have to go back to the year that made both of them, the season of contact. Nothing in the modern era compares to what those two did to each other across 2021, and the man who built the car Verstappen was driving watched the temperature climb from the pit wall.
The intensity, particularly after Silverstone, on track between Lewis and Max became so intense.
Adrian Newey named Silverstone for a reason, because Silverstone is where a championship fight turned into a physical one.
I think Max had very strong feelings on that Silverstone accident.
He had every reason to. Verstappen arrived at the British Grand Prix on pole, fresh from winning the sport's first ever sprint race, sitting on a 33-point championship lead.
And of course he'd been clear championship leader going into Silverstone.
Then came Copse, a blistering right-hander taken flat at roughly 290 kilometers an hour. Hamilton dived to the inside, drew alongside, and Verstappen turned in. Left front met right rear. The Red Bull was fired across the gravel and speared into the tyre wall at a measured 51G, rear wheel torn away, race over. Verstappen climbed out on his own legs and was driven to hospital for precautionary checks, released that evening battered and bruised. The stewards ruled Hamilton predominantly at fault. He was on a line that never reached the apex, with room available further inside, and handed him 10 seconds and 2 penalty points. And then came the twist that poisoned the well. The race was red flagged inside a single lap, so the barriers could be rebuilt, and during that stoppage, Mercedes repaired damage that would otherwise have ended Hamilton's afternoon. He served his 10 seconds, dropped to 4th, was waved through by Bottas, hunted Leclerc down, and retook the lead at Copse itself with 2 laps to run. He won. Verstappen watched it from a hospital bed. A 33-point cushion collapsed to 8 in 90 minutes. Horner called the move desperate, dangerous, and the punishment far too soft for what it produced. Hamilton insisted he had been alongside and that Verstappen turned in on him. Verstappen argued he had left space the moment Hamilton committed and that the penalty should have been heavier. Red Bull went as far as petitioning for a formal review, which was thrown out for producing nothing new. What happened next says more than the penalty did. Hamilton picked up the phone, called Verstappen to check he was all right, and told him the respect was still there, while noting that it did not feel like it was coming back the other way. Verstappen's camp, meanwhile, was busy attacking the way Hamilton had celebrated the win. Monza 2 months later was uglier still. Side by side into the first chicane, Verstappen was launched off the sausage curb, and the Red Bull came down on top of the Mercedes, its rear tyre grinding across the halo above Hamilton's head. Both cars beached, both drivers out. Hamilton later said the halo had saved him. This time, the stewards blamed Verstappen and gave him a 3-place grid drop for Russia, ruling his lunge had come too late to earn him any right to the road. Verstappen's answer was the same one he always gives. Hamilton squeezed him out of it. Then Jeddah in December, where Verstappen slowed to hand a position back before the DRS line. Hamilton was not told in time, and the Mercedes ran clean into the back of the Red Bull. Hamilton screamed brake test. The stewards found Verstappen predominantly at fault for erratic braking and gave him 10 seconds. Hamilton won, and the two arrived at the finale dead level, the title decider and the rulebook. 369.5 points each. That is how the 2021 season walked into Yas Marina, a dead heat, with Verstappen ahead only on countback through race wins. Hamilton launched off the line, took turn 1, and then spent 52 laps building a cushion of 11 to 13 seconds on aging hard tyres. It was, by any ordinary measure, a controlled and finished performance. Then Nicholas Latifi crashed at turn 14 on lap 53, and the safety car came out. Verstappen dived into the pits for fresh softs. Hamilton stayed out shootout to protect track position. Between them sat 5 lapped cars: Norris, Alonso, Ocon, Leclerc and Vettel. Race control first announced that lapped cars would not be permitted to overtake. Then, minutes later, race director Michael Massey released precisely those 5, and only those 5, before withdrawing the safety car at the end of that very same lap. The result was a single-lap shootout. Verstappen, on rubber that was seconds a lap quicker, swept past under braking for turn 5. Hamilton threw everything at the straights that followed and could not get back alongside. Carlos Sainz took third, and Verstappen took the title by 2.256 seconds. Mercedes protested twice and lost twice, once claiming Verstappen had briefly moved ahead behind the safety car, once attacking the procedure itself for releasing only the cars that mattered and pulling the safety car in a lap early. The stewards ruled that once the safety car in this lap message had been issued, its withdrawal was mandatory. A later FIA investigation conceded human error in the unlapping procedure, said Masi had acted in good faith under crushing time pressure, and confirmed the championship as final. For 2022, the wording was rewritten from any lapped cars to all lapped cars, with software introduced to strip the guesswork out of race control entirely, and Abu Dhabi was only the loudest failure of a rulebook that had been creaking all year. The overtaking standards both drivers were being judged against were not public rules at all. They were internal FIA notes about how much of your car had to be alongside by the apex, which is exactly why Mercedes could waive those guidelines at the stewards after Silverstone and still lose. Track limits shifted circuit by circuit. Verstappen was made to hand back the lead in Bahrain for running wide, then lost pole and a fastest lap point in Portugal for the same offense. The FIA published proper driving standards guidelines for 2022 only after the damage was done. The radio traffic to race control that afternoon captured the split perfectly. Wolff telling Masi the procedure was not right. Red Bull pushing to get the lapped cars between the 2 title contenders cleared out of the way. The final ledger read 395.5 to 387.5. Mercedes took the constructors' title and lost the only one that mattered to them. And here is the part people conveniently forget. In Parc Fermé, with the trophy gone and the season in ruins, Hamilton walked over to the man who had just taken it from him. Verstappen recounted that Hamilton said, "Well done, congrats," that he thanked Hamilton for a season in which they had dragged each other to the absolute limit, and that the gesture was what real sportsmen do. Anthony Hamilton spoke to Jos Verstappen. Nobody swung at anybody. The drivers, in other words, closed the book that night. Newey watched the people around them refuse to. The verdict. Strip away the mythology and one thing becomes obvious very quickly. The venom people attached to this rivalry has never really come out of the drivers' mouths. It came out of the garages behind them. Horner called Hamilton's Silverstone move an amateur's mistake. Toto Wolff branded Monza a tactical foul, insisting Verstappen knew a crash was the price of not getting past. Wolff labeled Horner a windbag who wants to be on camera. Horner fired back over flexing wings and front-wing hypocrisy. By Qatar, sitting shoulder to shoulder in a press conference, Horner declared flatly that there was no relationship between them and that he had no intention of kissing Wolff's backside, while Wolff described the fight as having escalated from Olympic boxing to professional boxing to mixed martial arts. Then came the cost cap, the slowest burning grudge of the lot. Red Bull's 2021 accounts were adjusted upward by £5.6 million across 13 categories, leaving the team £1.86 million over the limit, a breach of 1.6%, a $7 million fine landed, along with a 10% cut to wind tunnel and simulation time that bit straight into the 2023 car. Horner called the punishment draconian. Mercedes called the sporting hit smaller than Red Bull was pretending. The 2021 season kept generating headlines a full year after the checkered flag fell. Both men eventually said the chapter should be shut, with Horner describing 2021 as brutally intense, but still underpinned by a residual respect. It took them years to get there. The drivers, meanwhile, were far calmer than their bosses, and they always had been. Back in 2015, a teenage Verstappen was already saying he could beat Hamilton in equal machinery, while calling him fast and a great fighter, and in recent years he has admitted he takes no pleasure in watching Hamilton struggle. Verstappen has admitted the pair hated each other at moments during that season, and then said in the same breath that the respect between them stayed intact. Hamilton dismissed the idea of ongoing problems as fairy tales and said simply, "I respect him." Verstappen called their relationship quite straightforward, and Hamilton one of the greatest ever. He also said this plainly, "I don't need that kind of rivalry. History helps here. Every great Formula One feud gets measured against Senna and Prost, and 2021 earned the comparison honestly. A 12-year age gap, an established champion against a rising one, and collisions that shaped a title. But Senna and Prost waged war for years. Hamilton and Verstappen finished first and second in 14 of 22 races in a single savage season, arrived at the final round dead level, and then never got the rematch because Red Bull ran away with the new regulations while Mercedes lost the plot. So what is actually left? A driving style that Hamilton has never been comfortable racing against. And Jenson Button, who spent years inside that paddock, describes it better than anyone.
He's a different animal than anyone else on the grid to go up against.
Button's point is that Verstappen does not race the field. He races you specifically.
Whether that's to win or just to beat you as his championship rival, and he just aims at you.
And that single-mindedness is exactly what has left marks on Hamilton's cars for 5 straight years.
And when someone is that dedicated to just beat you, that's tough.
Which brings us back to the corner in Austria. Hamilton did not hate Verstappen there. He simply refused one more time to be the man who lifts. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.